Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive, curated just for you. Today we're taking a look at this text called Essence of Merli, Remembrance, Knowledge, and Purity. It's dated February 20th, 2025. And we're going to try to unpack some of these spiritual insights, especially this concept of detachment that keeps coming up. You ready to dive in?
Absolutely. What I think is really fascinating is how the text uses the Theravada temple to help explain these ideas.
Right. It says that like the physical temple represents the material world, but then the gathering of souls learning these spiritual principles that represents like a living temple. So what do you think that comparison is trying to tell us?
Well, it's emphasizing the contrast between, I guess, the physical world, which is temporary, versus, that spiritual realm, which is eternal.
Yeah.
It's like we often get caught up, in the physical aspects of a place like the Theravada temple, right? Admiring the architecture and all the deities, but we sort of miss the deeper meaning, like the essence of what it really represents.
That's so true. We're all busy trying to get that perfect picture for Instagram, and we forget to just like experience the place and what it stands for.
Totally. And the text even says that even some song lyrics are wrong
Hmm.
because they refer to God as like an ocean of love.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. I was a little confused. Isn't love like a good thing? Why would the text have a problem with that?
Well, it's saying that God is the source of knowledge, actually, not love. And knowledge, it argues, is more like an ocean because it's vast and deep and it's life-giving. Love, on the other hand,
Uh,
it's more fleeting, it's intangible. Doesn't really fit the analogy.
Okay, I can kind of see that, but I'm still a bit stuck on this idea that knowledge is more important than love. Doesn't that seem a bit cold? Like most spiritual traditions I've encountered, they really emphasize love and compassion and devotion.
It seems counterintuitive at first, I know. But the text seems to be saying that like true knowledge, a really deep understanding of the divine, that actually leads to like a higher form of love. Saying we got to move beyond just like the sentimental,
Oh, wait, she.
emotional aspects of love to a deeper connection. That's rooted in knowledge and understanding.
Okay, I'm starting to see where they're going with this. So it's not that love is bad, it's just not like the ultimate goal.
Right, and it draws a contrast between this idea and the concept of Bhakti Marg, which is the path of devotion, or
Yeah.
the path of love. It's implying that the path of knowledge leads to a higher spiritual state.
Interesting. So if knowledge is the key to spiritual progress here, what does the text say is the highest state someone can achieve? Because I'm guessing it's not just about getting a PhD in theology or something.
Not quite. It uses this really powerful phrase, dying while alive.
Yeah.
And before you get any morbid ideas, it's not talking about physically dying. It's about achieving complete detachment from the body and from all worldly attachments. It's like reaching a state where you are free from all karma.
Dying while alive. That's heavy stuff. And it compares this state to a snake shedding its skin, like leaving behind the old limited self, to embrace this new liberated way of being.
Exactly. It's about letting go of everything you think you are.
Yeah.
All those identities, all those attachments that are keeping you bound to the material world, and finally realizing your true self, the soul.
But the text keeps saying how hard that is, right? Like
Yeah.
achieving this kind of detachment and constantly remembering the divine. It's not exactly like a walk in the park.
Oh, you're telling me. It's like trying to meditate in Times Square. Our minds are just bombarded with distractions. Our senses are pulling us in every direction, and we are wired for connection and attachment.
So how do we even begin to cultivate this dying while alive state? What are some practical things that we can do?
Well, the text suggests a few things. First, we have to start shifting our awareness. Instead of identifying mainly with our physical bodies and all the desires that come with them, we need to see ourselves as souls, as spiritual beings having a human experience, like we're changing our internal operating system.
That makes sense. So instead of saying, I am hungry, you start thinking, my body is experiencing hunger, but my soul is content.
You got it. And it's not about denying the physical world or becoming an emotionless robot. It's about finding a balance between enjoying the sensory world
Yeah.
without getting completely lost in it.
Yeah. It's like appreciating the beauty of a flower without feeling like you need to pluck it and possess it.
Exactly. And the text also warns about getting too attached to physical forms, even those of revered teachers or gurus.
Wait, really? Why is that a problem? Isn't it natural to admire and respect people who are further along on the spiritual path?
Oh, absolutely. But the text is saying even that admiration can become another attachment. It can distract us from the real goal, which is connecting with the divine within ourselves, not just through someone else's interpretation.
So you can appreciate the wisdom of a teacher without turning them into like an idol.
You nailed it. It's about learning from them, integrating their teachings, but ultimately finding your own direct connection to the divine.
This is starting to click for me now. It's like the text is saying, don't just stand outside the Delvada temple admiring the statues. Go inside. Explore the inner chambers and discover your own personal connection to the divine.
I love that analogy. And the text also mentions these 5 ghosts that can hinder our spiritual progress.
5 ghosts? Is this like a spooky Halloween episode or something?
Not quite. The 5 ghosts are our 5 senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing.
Oh, so our senses can actually hold us back spiritually.
Exactly. Think about it. Our senses constantly bombard us with information.
Mhm.
They stimulate our desires. They create attachments. It's like being at an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's so hard to resist overindulging.
Okay, I see what they're saying. So it's not that our senses are bad, it's that we just need to be aware of how they can distract us from our spiritual goals.
Precisely. It's about finding the balance
Yeah.
between enjoying the sensory world without getting totally lost in it.
Right. It's like you can enjoy a delicious meal without becoming a slave to your cravings.
You got it. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're engaged with the world, but not controlled by it.
That's such a good point. So with all this talk about knowledge and attachment, where does service fit in? Does serving others play a role in this whole path of knowledge?
That's a great question. And the text definitely addresses that. But it's not just any kind of service. It's specifically about sharing this knowledge, this understanding of the divine with others. It's about helping them to awaken to their own potential.
So we're all called to be teachers in a way, to help others discover these same truths that have resonated with us.
Exactly. It's about paying it forward, contributing to the upliftment of all humanity. And the text says that true service, it comes from a place of detachment, selfless giving without expecting anything in return.
That's beautiful. It's like the more we understand and embody these teachings, the more we become these beacons of light for others who are looking for a similar path.
You're absolutely right. It's about radiating that inner knowledge and peace and letting it touch and inspire everyone around us.
This is blowing my mind. We've covered so much, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface of this text.
Oh, there's so much more to explore.
I can't wait.
Are you ready to keep going?
Totally hooked. Bring on the wisdom.
You know, we were talking about knowledge and detachment, but this text also uses some pretty interesting metaphors
Yeah.
to get these concepts across. And one that really stood out to me was this idea of Brahma's 1,000 arms.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It talks about how those pictures of deities in the Delvada temple, you know, the ones with all those arms, we shouldn't take them literally. But honestly, I'm not sure I got what the text was trying to say there.
Right. So remember, we're using the Delvada temple as like a framework for all this. And those deities with the multiple arms, they actually represent the vast progeny, all the spiritual descendants of Brahma. And Brahma is considered like the receiver of this divine knowledge. And then he disseminates it out, you know?
Okay, so it's not about physical strength or power. It's about the power of knowledge to spread and impact so many souls, like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And, you know, it all ties back to that main idea we keep talking about, the importance of getting that spiritual knowledge,
Yeah.
internalizing it,
Right.
and then sharing it with others as like the path to liberation.
It's like a treasure hunt, uncovering all these layers of meaning and symbolism.
I love that. And the text also emphasizes that we need to understand what they call the occupation, like the role of all these deities. It's like saying we have to move past blind faith and really try to understand the deeper meaning behind them.
So it's not just worshiping them, it's understanding the principles they represent. What can we learn from each figure? How can their story help us on our own journey?
Right. It's about going deeper, moving from just ritual to real personal understanding. And that connects back to this whole karma-free idea.
Right.
If you really get the nature of action and consequence, then you can act with more wisdom and detachment, not just be driven by ego and desire.
It's like saying knowledge is power, but it also comes with responsibility. The more you know, the more carefully you have to choose your actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the text knows this isn't easy. It keeps reminding us how hard it is to stay focused, to keep your intellect from wandering. I mean, think about it. We have so many distractions all the time, both inside and out.
It's like trying to stick to a diet when you're surrounded by pizza and donuts.
Exactly. Your senses are always tempting you. It's so easy to get pulled off track. And, you know, the text also says, don't be swayed by other people's opinions. Stay true to these teachings and apply them in your own way.
So we need to develop our own internal compass so we're not always second-guessing ourselves.
You got it. Cultivate that inner strength and clarity so you can navigate the world with more confidence and purpose.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but what about actually putting all this into practice? Like, what's the advice for bringing these teachings into daily life?
Well, it emphasizes this practice of incorporeal remembrance. It means remembering the divine, staying connected to that source of knowledge, even while you're doing everyday things.
So like having this background awareness of the divine all the time, kind of like having your favorite music playing softly throughout the day.
Yes, cultivating that inner connection. Like you're always being supported and guided, even in the middle of all the chaos. And the text also talks about detachment, not just from like material stuff, but also from our attachments to people and places, and even our own bodies.
Whoa, that's tough. It's like detaching from your own shadow.
It is a process. The text says that too. It's not about like suppressing your emotions
Mm.
or going to live alone in a cave. It's more about shifting your perspective, realizing your true self isn't limited by these temporary forms and connections.
Recognizing that the soul is eternal and unchanging, while our bodies and relationships and experiences are always changing.
Exactly. And the text says that this detachment actually leads to a much deeper and more fulfilling kind of love. It's like you're free from the need to possess or control others,
Mm.
and you're open to this more expansive love that comes from the soul.
So true love can only exist when we're not clinging to it, when we're not trying to force it or define it.
Yes, exactly. It's about surrendering, letting love flow through you without any attachment or expectation.
That's beautiful. But if I'm being honest, this whole idea of detaching from everything and everyone, even people I love and respect, it's a little scary. It feels like it goes against human nature.
I get it. It's a big change.
Yeah.
It definitely challenges how we normally think about relationships. But what if, instead of seeing it as a loss, we saw it as a transformation?
What do you mean?
Well, imagine if instead of clinging to the physical forms of those we love, we focused on connecting with their souls, their essence. Like we love them not for what they do for us or how they make us feel, but just for who they truly are, for that divine spark inside them.
That's a beautiful thought. True love goes beyond the limits of form and time.
Yes, and the text says that by practicing this kind of detached love, we're free from the pain of loss and separation. We realize that no one can take love away from us because it doesn't depend on things outside of ourselves.
So it's not about becoming emotionless
Right.
or shutting ourselves off from everyone. It's about shifting our focus.
Exactly. From the outside to the inside, from clinging to form to connecting with essence. And, the text uses this powerful analogy to explain this idea of becoming victorious over Revan.
Oh, yeah, that one really interested me. I know Raven is a big figure in mythology, but how does that fit in with detachment?
Well, in this philosophy, Revan represents all the negative forces, the bad habits, and the illusions that trap us in suffering.
So like our ego, our desires, our fears, all the things that stop us from reaching our full potential.
You got it. And conquering Revan means overcoming all those inner demons, those negative tendencies that hold us back from true freedom and happiness.
And the text says we do this through knowledge and yoga, right?
Exactly. It's through deep introspection and meditation and applying spiritual knowledge. That's how we conquer those forces and reach liberation.
So it's not about fighting some outside enemy. It's about conquering the negativity within ourselves, mastering our own mind.
Precisely. And it's an ongoing process,
Right.
a constant effort to refine your thoughts and words and actions and align them with your true spiritual nature.
Like we're constantly fighting this inner battle.
Right. To overcome our lower nature and reach our highest potential. And the text reminds us we're not alone in this. It talks about connecting with the divine, surrendering to a higher power, seeking support from others who are further along.
So even though the goal is to realize our own inner divinity, it's not a solitary journey.
Absolutely not. It's like we're all climbing this mountain together, and we can help each other, share our supplies, celebrate our victories.
I love that. So we've covered conquering our inner demons, but the text also talked about incorporeal remembrance versus body consciousness. What's that all about?
So body consciousness means you're completely identified with your physical form, your senses, and all those desires and attachments that come with that.
It's like being totally caught up in the illusion of the material world.
Exactly. You believe that your physical body and experiences are all there is, but incorporeal remembrance is the opposite. It's being aware of yourself as a soul, a spiritual being separate from your physical form.
Shifting our focus from the external to the internal.
You got it. And that shift is so important for reaching liberation.
This is all making so much sense. But one thing I keep wondering, if we're supposed to be completely detached, what about our human need for connection? Can we really experience deep connection while striving for detachment?
That is a deep question. And honestly, the text doesn't really give a clear answer. Maybe it's suggesting that true connection comes from recognizing the divine spark in everyone, instead of clinging to those outward forms and relationships.
So connecting on a soul level.
Exactly. Seeing the divine essence that unites us all.
Wow, this is a lot to process. But before we move on, I have one more question. The text talks about purifying the soul. What does that even mean? Is it like some kind of spiritual cleanse?
I like that. The text says our souls become impure through actions that come from ignorance and ego and being attached to the material world.
Like accumulating bad karma through thoughts and words and actions that aren't in line with spiritual truth.
Right. And purification means detaching from those negative things, aligning yourself with divine knowledge, and doing things that are selfless and good for others.
So choosing thoughts and words and actions that uplift and inspire, creating a positive impact.
Exactly. And this purification is ongoing. It's a continuous effort to refine ourselves and move closer to that state of dying while alive.
This has been so eye-opening, but I do have one final question that's been bugging me. If complete detachment is the goal, how does the text see the role of teachers or guides on this spiritual journey? Don't we need support and guidance along the way?
It's a really interesting question. And the text does touch on it, but doesn't really go into detail. Maybe it's saying that true teachers are the ones who point you towards that inner path, towards self-realization, instead of making you dependent on them.
So find teachers who empower us to be our own gurus.
Right. Trust our own inner compass and find that direct connection to the divine without just relying on external sources.
The teacher appears when the student is ready.
Exactly. Maybe the text is saying that true guidance ultimately comes from within, from that inner wisdom that comes when you quiet your mind and connect with your true nature. But before we dive deeper into that, let's take a minute to think about everything we've discussed so far.
That sounds good. This is a lot to take in. It's like we've been given a whole new way of seeing ourselves in the world.
It's definitely a shift in perspective. And the text encourages us to keep exploring these ideas, to try them out in our lives, and see what really resonates with us.
You know, it's interesting. As we're talking about all this, knowledge, detachment, this inner journey, the text uses this analogy of a student following a teacher. And it even mentions like a godfatherly university, which I thought was kind of cool.
It is a unique way to think about it.
No, right. It's like we're students in this cosmic classroom learning from the best teacher there is. But it's not about memorizing facts. It's more like unlearning all those limiting beliefs and habits that keep us stuck in these cycles.
Exactly. Like we're being re-educated, reprogrammed to be in line with our true spiritual nature. And, you know, like any good school, there are tests along the way.
Right. It talks about passing the examination, but not by taking a written test. More like by actually applying the knowledge in your life.
It's not enough to just understand it mentally. You have to live it, embody it in your everyday actions.
It's like the difference between reading a cookbook and actually cooking a meal.
Totally. You can have all the knowledge in the world,
Yeah.
but you only master a skill by practicing it. And the text seems to be saying that we're always being evaluated, not by some person, but by the universe itself, based on how aligned we are with truth.
Our actions have this ripple effect, shaping reality.
Exactly.
So the more we embody these teachings, detachment, service, remembrance, the closer we get to a more harmonious world.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And speaking of service, the text says that's a key part of this spiritual journey too. But it's a specific kind of service. It's about sharing this knowledge, helping others awaken to their own spiritual potential.
Right, like we're all meant to be teachers in a way.
Exactly. It's about passing on the torch of wisdom.
Helping to create a world where everyone is awakening and living in alignment with these principles.
It's a beautiful vision.
And it's not about preaching or converting anyone. It's about just living it and letting our actions speak for themselves.
Letting your light shine.
This has been an incredible deep dive. So many profound concepts, detachment, remembrance, knowledge, service, liberation. It's like we've been given this whole new roadmap for our spiritual journeys.
I agree. It's been really enriching. I hope it's made you more curious and inspired you to keep exploring all this in your own life.
Absolutely. And speaking of exploration, I love that question the text leaves us with about how we can balance this idea of complete detachment, even from our teachers, with our need for connection and guidance.
It's a real paradox. We're told to seek guidance from those further along, but then the ultimate goal is realizing the true teacher is within us.
So we're being guided to become our own gurus, in a way, to trust our own inner voice.
Exactly. Finding that balance between seeking wisdom from others and cultivating your own inner knowing.
It's a solitary journey, even though we're connected to others on a similar path.
Well said.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us. We've covered a lot. But remember, the real power is in putting all this into practice. Take what resonates with you, experiment, and see how it can change your life. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep diving deep.